a higher order logic and understanding of the heart. That's in the seat of the soul. But this is impossible to grasp, but it's impossible to ignore. So there you are. There I was. There we will all be as we begin to experience this new consciousness, which cannot be explained. The intellect, your intellect and mine, was designed to analyze, compare, evaluate, assimilate data from the five senses and present it to the personality if it is useful in creating external power, manipulation, and control. All of that is our past. That doesn't mean that there aren't hundreds of millions, thousands of millions of humans who are still five sensory. We're not better than they. It's just a temporary ebb and flow of evolution. We will soon all be multi-sensory. And those of us who choose will create authentic power, and eventually we will all choose. Because the alternative of living and creating with fear and in fear is too painful and too destructive. And our desire to give the gifts that we were born to give is too strong. And you can't do that unless you're in love. You can't do that while you're in fear.
Gary Zukav, welcome back on Just Happen, brother. What are you most excited about right now in your life?
This show.
Me too. It's an honor, a pleasure, and a gift to be able to have you here again after almost 2.5 years since we last connected. But I felt your energy very present since the day I picked up Seed of the Soul, brother. So I'm excited. And it almost seems like right now we're at a very interesting moment of human history. We're at a precipice of time where human evolution is becoming conscious for one of the first times in our understanding, in our history. So I would love to begin with you expressing how is human consciousness becoming an evolution that we're more aware of now, that is at the forefront of where our awareness should be. What is so important about the times that we're living in right now?
Everything. There's never been a time like this. You know that. You've talked about it on your show often. The entire human species is undergoing an epic and unprecedented transformation. The old consciousness is limited to the five senses, to what can be seen and touched and tasted and heard and smelled. And it understands power as the ability to manipulate and control. The new species, the new consciousness, is not limited to the five senses, and it understands power as alignment of the personality with the soul, with harmony, cooperation, sharing, and reverence for life. The new consciousness is emerging in thousands of millions of us, and it is continuing, and it's also in thousands of millions of neonates that are now being born. Within a few generations, the whole human species will be multisensory. But the new kind of power is not a gift. It needs to be created. It's authentic power. Authentic power requires you to distinguish within yourself between love and fear, and choose love no matter what is happening inside of you or what is happening outside of you. What's happening inside of you could be despondency, hopelessness, despair, anger, resentment, in addition to gratitude and some wonderful experiences. And what's happening outside of you could be another 9/11 type event or a natural disaster, and be able to choose love no matter what is happening inside of you or outside of you. That's creating authentic power. And everything that my spiritual partner, Linda Francis and I talk about, give events about, write about, is how to create authentic power and also how to recognize the new consciousness. For quite a while now, I've been describing the new consciousness in terms that everyone really knows now. If you have the thought, I'm more than a body and a mind, that is a multi-sensory question. The old consciousness was 5 sensory. The new consciousness has another sensory system that's not so limited. If you ever have the question, I think that the world is not random, really. I think that I can learn about myself from it. That's a multi-sensory question. And if you know things about other people that the 5 senses have not told you and cannot tell you, that's a multi-sensory experience also. But now we're born into that. Your generation was born into that. It is emerging in my generation and all the generations in between. Now there's more. We are the more. I'll give you an example. Individuals with the old consciousness experience within themselves an uncrossable barrier between in here and out there. That barrier doesn't exist in the new consciousness. There is no difference between in here and out there. There's no difference between me, and others. There are no others. There is one, and all is that. This is the larger awareness that is beginning to emerge in and permeate our awareness.
It's so interesting because I learned recently ago that what limits most people is the fear of death. And that is one of the biggest fears that we see in our life. And knowing that, can this physical body end? How can we really let go of that? And you talk about this change of consciousness as the knowing of the existence of a part of ourselves that is immortal. So I'd love if we could speak upon that immortality that we have and what part of us exactly is immortal.
You need to clarify what you mean by us. If you're talking about a personality, that means the you, Emilio, that was born on a certain day, that carries your name, and that will die on a certain day. Nothing about it is immortal. However, your life itself is an incarnation of a part of an immortal energy, and that's your soul. But you are your soul. You are an incarnation of a part of your soul. But that part of your soul has all the power of your soul calibrated to experiences of physicality, time, space, matter, and duality. You are a powerful and creative, compassionate, and loving spirit. And as you align yourself, your personality with that spirit, with your soul, you begin to move beyond all that keeps you from that experience. And all that keeps you from that experience is fear. Now, the spiritual path now, in my experience, does not require crystals or crucifixes. It does not require statuary. It requires emotional awareness. It requires responsible choice, which means choices of consequences for which you are willing to assume responsibility. It is a journey into awareness, into freedom, and into love. That's the destination. That's what we are. You might say that we, and now we means my incarnation and yours and the incarnation of those who are listening to this program, are all on a journey from love to love. What happens between the beginning of that journey and the end of that journey is your life. How will you use it? That's the question now.
And when we remember that before we made that incarnation down here, we signed what you call sacred contract with the universe. And you said that this is what informs our incarnation in your personality with frightened and loving parts. So it's almost like embedded in the code of the universe. The frightened parts of the personality were also there to teach us something. What exactly is that?
Love. But fear is not a part of the universe. It's not embedded in the universe. It's a part of the earth school. Your soul is not a part of the earth school. And when you die, when your incarnation dies, you will not be either. What is embedded in the code of the universe? First of all, by code, if you mean something that has to be deciphered or a programming code, it's neither. Nothing has to be deciphered. The universe is love. You are love. The universe is compassionate. The earth school itself is a gift of compassion, although it hurts sometimes. Every time you experience a part of your personality that's not loving, it's a part that comes from fear. It originates in fear. You experience it, for example, as resentment, jealousy, anger, superiority and entitlement, inferiority and needing to please, jealousy. These are all so painful. They are parts of your personality. These experiences are not coming from the unchangeable ground of your being. They're coming from parts of your personality. And your personality has other parts. Some of them originate in love, and they experience the same circumstances in the earth school, but very differently. We experience those parts of our personality as gratitude, appreciation, caring, contentment, patience, all of the universe. And when you are experiencing these parts of your personality, you feel good. How you feel good and how you don't feel good is an important part of your awareness that spiritual growth requires you to develop. It's emotional awareness.
There's so much talk right now about this new earth, and a lot of people are coming to that realization or the belief system of the earth is going to change completely. We're going to be in a new dimension. But I heard you speak upon this quote from the Buddha of enlightenment. Before enlightenment, you chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, you still chop wood, carry water. And, enlightenment, that could be a whole different conversation that we can open up with. But with this new consciousness that you're referring to, do you see that it's going to be a before and after where the whole world and the systems that created the structures right now, is that all going to change? Or are we going to be living in a very similar world with just a new awareness?
I would like to suggest to everyone who's listening to us that you not accept anything that I say is so simply because I say it. On the contrary, if I say anything that you resonate with, then experiment with that and see what that creates in your life. And if it's what you want to create, experiment some more. And if it doesn't create what you want, if it doesn't create an increased appreciation for the universe, if it doesn't create more compassion, if it doesn't create patience, if it doesn't create gratitude and joy, throw it out. Don't try to wear a shoe that pinches. Now I'll return to your question. I don't know. But I do know that we are in the Earth School. I would not expect to be in the Earth School and suddenly have the consciousness of one that is not in the Earth School. In other words, I would not step in front of a truck and expect not to be crippled or killed. I would expect to continue to be annoyed, irritated, angered, enraged, and judgmental of things that activate frightened parts of my personality. I would expect that creating authentic power will continue to be a challenge, because in order to love, in order to give the gifts that you were born to give, you must move beyond the control of the parts of your personality that originate in fear. And doing that requires commitment and courage, compassion, and all of those are not going to disappear because your awareness expands. The term New Earth is a beautiful term, but in my experience, the Earth is not going to change. The Earth is a living entity. The Earth exists with us or without us. Aboriginal cultures experience this much more than most of us do. And so they are grateful continually for Mother Earth, for Pachamama, same term. I am too. I am not worried about the Earth. I am concerned about my consciousness and what it contributes to our species and to human evolution. For most of my life, my contributions have been those of fear. And now the reverse is happening. My life has also gotten joyful, and it didn't have much joy in it before, although I thought I was a pretty cool dude. Does that answer your question or begin to?
Yes. And I'm really curious now, as you opened up in your personal experience, what shifted for you to make that transition from fear to love?
It was incremental. It started when I first wrote a book about quantum physics. And while I was writing that book, I realized that I wasn't writing it alone, that there's no such thing as aloneness. It's not possible to be alone. And so that was when I experienced non-physical reality for the first time. It wasn't mystical. It wasn't esoteric. It was there. It was real. And those increments have been continuing throughout my life. A big increment was when I met my first non-physical teacher. I didn't really believe in non-physical teachers until I talked to one at first. By the way, when I talk about a non-physical teacher, I'm talking about one with a capital T. As we become multisensory, we begin to be able to communicate with non-physical presences. Some of them don't know much more than the person who's taking groceries out from your store. So be discerning. But you can tell a real non-physical teacher because everything you hear from it will feel grounded and right. A non-physical teacher will never tell you what to do. Do this or do that. Never. If you ever encounter that, you're not in communication with a non-physical teacher. You are in communication with a frightened part of your personality. A non-physical teacher will show you new ways of looking that will be helpful to you. There's a quote from the Course in Miracles that's perfect. It says, "Angels light the way so that all darkness vanishes." And you are standing in a light so bright and clear that you can understand all things. That is a treasure in your life, such a teacher. And we all have one or more, depending upon the influence that we have, the scope of our influence. That was a big increment for me, and I put all of that into a book called The Seat of the Soul. Another huge increment was Linda Francis, because when I met her, a lot of increments, you might say, came with
a lot of chemistry.
I had never loved anyone before. I'd been addicted to sex. I loved riding motorcycles. I wouldn't say loved is the right word, but it made me feel superior. I needed to prove myself. I needed to feel admired. The street name for that is macho. Macho means, describes someone who's so frightened he doesn't even know he's frightened. And he's controlled by fear. And I was that. When I graduated from college, I enlisted in the Army. I became a paratrooper. I became a Green Beret in Vietnam. All because I needed to prove to myself that I was admirable. That was the term I used. But what I actually meant was lovable. So all of that was part of my development, the development of my consciousness. When I met Linda, for the first time, I began to experience things I'd never experienced before. It felt right to be with her. I'd been with a lot of women, more than I could remember, and I cared nothing for any of them, and they cared nothing for me. That's the nature of a sexual addiction. It's a mutual exploitation. There is no intimacy in it at all. Although it may seem intimate, it's not. I discovered not that I loved Linda, but I loved somebody for the first time. What really was different was that I discovered that I love loving Linda. Where did that come from? How could I love loving Linda? And when I first met her, I wasn't attracted to her at all. On the contrary. But when she moved to Mount Shasta, which was a small mountain community I was living in, I was completely surprised at how happy I was to see her. That wasn't my experience of her when I met her at a New Age retreat a few months earlier. I pushed her away, judged her, didn't like the way she looked or talked. But when I saw her in Mount Shasta, when she arrived, I was happy. And I never felt happy like that before. And so we got to know each other. I helped her move in. She had a little cabin, and I had a little cabin. And I taught her some basic things like how you need to lay in wood for the winter because it's cold here in the winter, and there's no thermostat in your little cabin. There's only a wood-burning stove. And she would come over to talk with me in the afternoon, and sometimes I liked that. And other times I was so uncomfortable with her that I just wished she'd leave. And then after about 6 months, the thought came to me, I think I'm in a relationship. She went to Europe to be with a guru for 2 weeks. And while she was gone, I realized I don't want to live without her. This was not a Hollywood kind of experience. It was a simple, grounded experience. I didn't want to live in a separate little cabin from the little cabin she was living in. I wanted us to be in the same cabin. I wanted to be with her. And when she came back, she'd had the same experience. And so this sweet experience was one that we shared easily and naturally as we moved into my little cabin. And then we began to grow together. I remember once we were walking up a steep street next to where we lived. And her running shoe came untied. So she knelt to tie it. And while she was kneeling, I was looking straight down at the top of her head. And I saw one gray hair. And I loved that gray hair. And I knew that I was going to grow old with her. And I loved that thought. And then I discovered that I loved loving her. So all of those things were happening. And over the years that we were together, I came to admire her courage, her clarity, her determination, her brilliance. And to see, what's the word? The vernacular might be superpower, but it's not a superpower. It's the power. She loved people, and she connected with them. Not an emotional, mushy, soft kind of love, but a sane, grounded, intelligent, sharing. We could be on a plane, and she'd talk to the person across the aisle, and by the time the plane landed, they didn't want to leave her because she was interested in them. She wanted to hear about them. I'm like that now, but I wasn't then. I was admiring it in Linda, and I did for years. And then she had a stroke, and her body died in an ICU room 3 days later. That was the next big increment. Everything began to change. First, I didn't know that pain like I felt could exist. I couldn't imagine it. I still can't now, which is a blessing. I can't take myself back to it. But it was big. It was like a mountain. And I couldn't go through it, around it, over it, under it. It was there. And it wasn't moving. And it was more than I had ever experienced. And I decided, as I was feeling that, not to squander one bit of that pain, because I know that everything that happens in my life happens for my spiritual growth, including that pain. And I set the intention not to experience it fully, not to distract myself in any way, no matter how small. And 2 days later, I was sitting outside watching some trees move gently in the wind. And the realization came to me, I don't have a purpose for living anymore, except to love people. And it's permanent. It was permanent, and it is now. I would have thought that before. I might have even said that before, but it really wasn't so. But it is so now. And then things continued to occur to me. I mean, to happen to me, not thoughts. I was driving out of a bank parking lot because I had to learn all the things that Linda knew about our finances. And I woke up in the Earth School. Now, the Earth School is a term that we've used for years as a shorthand for this domain of time and space and matter and duality. And this wasn't a thought. It was an experience. It was a grounded experience of simply waking up. And I looked across the street. There's still people walking on the sidewalk like before. I looked down the street. There's still cars stopped at a red light like there were before. But I realized for the first time, I'm in the Earth School. We've used that term for decades, but I woke up in it. I'm in the Earth School. And the next day I realized, when I woke up, I realized I was surprised at how asleep the world that I just woke up from is. And I was hugely surprised at how asleep I was in the same world before I woke up. These were big surprises to me. And the next day, I realized that the world that I woke up into is exactly the same as the world that I was asleep in. And the next day, I realized that I was exactly the same as I was when I was asleep in the world. And that's where your story about the Buddhist enlightenment before and after requires the same thing, chopping wood and carrying water. I do not know what enlightenment is, but I do know that the before and after story is my story. Before I woke up, my path was creating authentic power, cultivating love, and challenging fear. And after I woke up, my path was creating authentic power, cultivating love, and challenging fear. That was another incremental movement. There were more. I can tell you one more. Our support team, some of our oldest and dearest co-creators, come to Ashland, Oregon, where I live, twice a year, just to have a meeting, to see what we're going to do next, what we're going to co-create next. And this happened 2 months after Linda's soul went home. And we were all still jolted and in pain. And we decided to create a video to celebrate Linda's life and to show people that it's appropriate at the end of a life, not to grieve or mourn or wail or cry, but to celebrate the life that's just been lived. Because entrance into the Earth School is voluntary. Not every soul that would like to be here gets the chance to be here. It's a dramatic act of spiritual responsibility, incarnation. And it is appropriate to celebrate it. So we made a video, and you can watch it. It's on our website.
I did.
We decided to post it on the website a year after her soul went home. The website is the name of the book, seatofthesoul.com, like what you sit on, of the SOUL. And you'll see when you go in the menu, Celebration of Linda Francis. Click that. You'll see that video. It's raw. It's wonderful.
It's powerful.
It's Linda. Yes. So afterwards, after we made that video, we all went out to dinner. There were about 20 of us. And the server, came to me, because I was the oldest there, I imagine, and said, "Do you want this on one bill or separate tabs?" And I said, "Separate tabs." That's what I always said. I was always stingy with money. But I couldn't do that. I had to run after her and say, I changed my mind. Put it all on one bill and give it to me. I wanted to do that. No second agenda. I never felt that before. And the next day, this realization came to me softly, but with authority. I'm generous now. So all of these things have been parts of my process. And all along the way, my consciousness has been expanding. And Linda and I have been expressing our expanding consciousnesses. Just after Linda's soul returned home, it was about 2 weeks, I finally was able to communicate with one of our non-physical teachers. We have two. And I didn't ask for it. I was sort of in a reverie, a daydream. And I was thinking about the love that Linda and I experienced, how complete it was, how easy, that doesn't mean that we didn't have power struggles and we didn't have difficult times when we were in frightened parts of our personalities. But this love was unlike anything we'd experienced. It was there. It couldn't be better. I couldn't love her less. I loved her. And she knew it. And I knew that she loved me in the same way. And we were. And I was thinking these thoughts when suddenly the non-physical teacher was there. And it said, now let your love encompass all your beloveds. Because I had said to him, I don't know if it's a he, it's an impersonal energy dynamic. I had said, all of this is focused on one precious beloved, Linda. And he said, now let your love encompass all your beloveds. And I said, why do I hurt so much? And he said, because frightened parts of your personality demand that the world be other than it is. That has nothing to do with your love for Linda. Let it go. Co-create with her. Now, I told you earlier that a non-physical teacher does not tell you what to do. This one has only told me what to do twice in my life. And I've known it for almost 40 years. And experimented. I don't take what it says for granted either. But I know now what it is. The first time it gave me a direction was shortly after I first met it. It said, write this book. It was talking about the seat of the soul. He said, now is the time to write this. It's essential that you write it. It's necessary that you write it now. The time to write it is now. You were not born to ski. And so I did. And afterwards, when I finished the manuscript and was going to submit it, and I was thinking, my, oh my first book about physics won the American Book Award. It had a rave review in the New York Times. What is the New York Times going to think about a book about evolution, reincarnation, and consciousness? And our teacher said to me, don't worry yourself. This arrow will find its mark. I had no idea how impactful that would be when it happened. The second time this teacher told me to do something was co-create with Linda. He said, the thing to take with you, Gary, now is you are with Linda. Co-create with her. And when that happened, Emilio, something came up in me so deep, like the ocean coming up. And And through tears, I was laughing, I was crying, I had snot running from me. I didn't know if I was laughing or crying. And this said, I will co-create with you, beloved. I will co-create with you. I don't know how. I don't know how this book that I'm writing now will fit into that, but I will co-create with you. And Linda said to me, the book you are writing now will be the prelude to what we co-create. And that was the first thing she told me after her soul went home. And these other things began to happen. I continue to communicate with our teachers, of course. They were my lifeline to sanity and grounded. And, well, I've told you those parts. And kept telling me things that I've told you. For example, there's no difference between inside and outside. Well, we've told people that before, but that's not the same as the experience. We've told people all is one. That's not the same as the experience. And the experience brings with it other experiences and realizations that are startling. Months ago, one of our teachers told me, this is a change in your evolution today. Mark this day. And I said, what's going to happen? And the teacher said, you will no longer need to record and transcribe and study what I tell you or what I tell Linda. And I said, well, then what? And he said, you will partake of it. And he didn't explain it. But over time, I began to understand that. For example, he would tell me something that was really deep and meaningful to me, and I'd say, oh, I'm going to pause and absorb that. And the teacher said, you can't absorb it, Gary. You are it. This is part of the new consciousness. It is troubling. At first, I could not make sense of it. For example, the teacher told me, the universe is inside you. It's not outside you. And I thought, I can't tell people that. That sounds completely solipsistic, narcissistic, unbalanced, New Age fantasy. But that's what I was told, and so I knew it was so. So I started to experiment with this. I looked outside again. I saw trees moving again in the breeze, and I said, well, I experimented. I said, this is the universe. It's out there. So it's always been out there. I'm looking at it out there right now. Now I'm going to do an experiment. I'm going to pretend that it's inside me. So I did. I pretended. And I could sort of pretend, I'm looking inside me, not outside. And then I went back. Now it's outside me. Then I shifted again. Now it's inside me. And after a while, Emilio, I couldn't shift back anymore. It's inside. So now, what was I going to do? This makes no sense at all. And So I said, well, wait a minute. Well, there's other people in this universe. What about them? They're doing things and I'm not controlling any of it. And he said, you are not responsible for what happens in the universe once you realize that it's inside you. You are responsible for your choices. And this is a part of the troubling that I mentioned. It's troublesome as the new consciousness comes into your being, into your experience, because it does not make sense. And I had to be told several times. At one time, one of the teachers said, the time has come for the cessation of understanding and to focus instead on the giving and sharing of joy. And after a while, I had to stop trying to understand. It was too painful. It just couldn't be done. The teacher would say this and then that, and I'd say, how do those fit together? And they'd say, they don't. You've once again reached the limit of your intellect, of your understanding. Now I don't try to understand it anymore because I know from experience that it can't be understood. And I was told early, and Linda and I were told early, that instead of the intellects being replaced by a higher order logic and understanding of the heart, that's in the seat of the soul. But this is impossible to grasp. But it's impossible to ignore. So there you are. There I was. There we will all be as we begin to experience this new consciousness, which cannot be explained. The intellect, your intellect and mine, was designed to analyze, compare, evaluate, assimilate data from the five senses and present it to the personality if it is useful in creating external power, manipulation, and control. All of that is our past. That doesn't mean that there aren't hundreds of millions, thousands of millions of humans who are still five sensory. We're not better than they. It's just a temporary ebb and flow of evolution. We will soon all be multi-sensory. And those of us who choose will create authentic power. And eventually we will all choose. Because the alternative of living and creating with fear and in fear is too painful and too destructive. And our desire to give the gifts that we were born to give is too strong. And you can't do that unless you're in love. You can't do that while you're in fear. So I began to follow the only thing that I could. So I will give our listeners now an exercise, something to consider. First, that the universe is in you. And by the way, that was so unbelievable to me that I started looking around. I thought, I must find a way to prove this or to communicate it. And then I remembered that the Lakota culture, which is a culture that Linda and I are in, were adopted into, that wisdom says the center of the universe is everywhere. I've heard those words so often, but I never tried to understand them because I knew I couldn't. But then when I tried to understand them, when I decided I won't let them pass over me anymore, but sink into me, I realized it's impossible. How can the center of the universe? That means the center of the universe is in me. The center of the universe is in me. It's also in you, Emilio. It's also in everyone who's listening to us. So then I remembered when Siddhartha became enlightened, he saw worlds as numerous as dust motes. You know what a dust mote is? And when you see a shaft of sunlight coming in the window on a sunny day, and you see these myriad of little things floating in it, each one is a dust mote. The Buddha saw worlds as numerous as dust motes, each with a Buddha and a path to enlightenment. How many dust motes are there in a shaft of sunlight? How many shafts of sunlight are there in the universe? That's what the Buddha saw. That lined up exactly with what I was also told, that you are a unique expression of the universe. Not a unique experience of the universe, a unique expression of the universe. And so are you, Emilio. And so are you, everyone who is listening. So these are things to experiment with. You can think about them, but thinking about them will lead you to a dead end. But that's part of the process, at least it was for me. The universe is inside you, and there's no outside. What does that mean? What does it really mean? It means that you are responsible for what you choose, and what you choose changes your unique experience of the universe. And you're responsible for all of that. Karma doesn't stop working. As your consciousness expands, it never stops working. It is, you might say, an absolute truth. It's not a personal truth. There is no form of consciousness in the universe which is in you that is not responsible for its choices. So I'm grateful to you very much, Emilio. I've appreciated you since we met and what you are doing, and I appreciate this opportunity to share some of these experiences with your viewers. I feel a lot of them are Gen Z. I have an affinity for Gen Z. It is probably the first generation to be born with the new consciousness, all of it. So it doesn't need to be explained what the new consciousness is. You're living it. What you don't have is a contrast with the old consciousness. What you don't have is an understanding of why the world into which you were born is the way it is. It's collapsing. It's disintegrating. All of the social structures in it are disintegrating because they are all based on external power. And external power now produces only violence and destruction. It can create nothing else. Let me give you an example. It's evident in the United States that our political system is not functioning, and it's not getting better. That's because our social structure of governance is now dissolving. It's crumbling. And it can't be fixed because it's not broken. It's obsolete. And every collective that was formed by the consciousness of 5 sensory humans, the old consciousness, is now experiencing this, including the United States of America. Our form of governance is constitutional representative democracy. In my opinion, that is the most exquisite perfect form of governance created by the old consciousness. It is designed to harness conflicting pursuits of external power for the common good. It has three parts of government, and they balance one another by intention. Each of those parts of the government has different participants in it whose terms of office are different, and they're chosen differently. All of this harnesses conflicting pursuits of external power, and it harnesses it for the common good. Now, the common good does not include external power. Now there is no good at all, in any way, under any circumstance, to external power. And the pursuit of it creates only violence and destruction. And that's what we're seeing. That's what we saw in the latest State of the Union address. It was uncivil. It was cruel. It was rude. There was no connection. There was no love. There was no commonality. This system of governance, like all of our social structures, is decaying to disintegrating, and it's got no salvage value. That's what we're experiencing now. And so it's very helpful to understand these things in the new consciousness that's emerging in us, our will. For example, I mentioned earlier that 5 sensory humans, and maybe some multi-sensory humans, have within them what appears to be a barrier between inside and outside. That barrier does not exist in the new consciousness. That means not, I'll tell you what it does mean. It means that to change the world requires changing yourself, because you are not different from the world. That's what Gandhi, one of my heroes, said. In effect, not those words, but in effect, he said, be the change. As we become multisensory and the new consciousness begins to bloom in us, we see that that's not a slogan. That's not advice. That's observation. You can't change the world because the discord, the rage, the disconnection, the competition, the violence, the brutality in the world are in you. And you are not separate from the world. You and the world are one. To change it requires a different kind of power. That's authentic power, and that brings us back to what we're talking about. Everything brings us back to what we're talking about, which is love. Love is real. Fear is an illusion. It doesn't appear to be illusion. I had to hold on to that when Linda's body died. The entire realm of fear is the realm of illusion. And we all know that. Otherwise, John Lennon would have written a song called All We Need Is Fear. And everyone knows that's an absurdity. And an ugly one. All we need is love. Because eventually we will realize that love heals everything. And love is all there is.
And Gary, thank you, first of all, so much for that transmission and taking us there, taking us into all the moments in your life that have blossomed your heart, and that journey of the intellect to the heart, which I believe right now we're as a collective shifting into. The intellect has ruled over so many of the things, and that's even one of the shadows I grasp onto is the intellect. Sometimes my mind wants to understand these, I think, transcendent topics in a very intellectual way. And when I surrender the mind, when I surrender the logical brain into my heart, that's when it all makes sense, and it like clicks in a different way. One thing that I wanted to hone in through that transmission was really this aspect of communicating with the beyond. And when Linda transitioned to the non-physical reality, you were processing that in real time, and you were processing and even creating messages for your community around what you were experiencing in that time. I really recommend people to go through its 11 personal messages that you left for us, and so much reflections, so much in there. There was things that you said that were important to you that lost their importance. You said that when a soul decides to return home, nothing can stop it. For this process of mourning, let's say, and it might not just have to do with a soul leaving back into the non-physical reality, but maybe a heartbreak or the termination of a relationship or a job or many different things here in the Earth School. Processing that through authentic power must be very different than processing it through the ways that we've been programmed or accustomed to process. So how was your experience where the initial reaction was to go to the fear, to then processing that, mourning and embracing that through time and allowing your heart to open?
Well, it wasn't the process of going to fear. Fear came. It was there. And it came as a mountain of pain. And you used the word transmission, which is a beautiful term. But every time someone speaks to you, well, transmission, words carry consciousness. And the consciousness of the word transmission is that, oh, wait a minute, I'm hearing something. There it is. Now, I'm going to tell it to you. This is the transmission. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about a consciousness that's emerging in you. It's not, it may sound like that at first, but it's in you. And as you move into it, you become the source. If you want to call it a transmission, what are you transmitting? Love. But as you become the love, you don't have to listen for it and then say, here's the way it is. You become it. You become it because you are it. We become accustomed to thinking of things in terms of parts and the relationships between them. There are no such things, and there never have been. There is one. And all is that. And you are that. Why not create love? Why not create with love? That's what creating authentic power is. Come to our website. It's got courses on it, online courses. Read the books. Learn how to create authentic power. That's what you were born for. Eventually you will. And as you do, you open yourself. And as you open yourself, your awareness begins to expand. And as your awareness begins to expand, so do you, and so does your life. And then there comes a time when you can look at someone and say, you are a powerful and creative, compassionate, and loving spirit. And the pain in your life is a measure of the distance between that reality and your self-image. I wouldn't suggest that you go into the grocery store and tell that to the first clerk who checks out your groceries. But when it's appropriate and your heart will tell you, you can discuss these things because they are meaningful. They're the most meaningful things. What is more meaningful? And if you're not sure what you should be doing in the world, Look for meaning as your compass and follow it and see where it takes you. Might take you to something that quickly takes you to something else. It quickly takes you to the realization that this is what gives you satisfaction. This. And then you're passionate about it like you are in sharing what you share on your powerful podcast.
Gary, what do we take with us when we pass on to non-physical reality?
We've been talking about non-physical reality as though it's somewhere else. There isn't somewhere else. So you're not packing your bag, getting on a new age aircraft or whatever the vehicle is and going somewhere else. And then you're asking me when you get there and you unpack the bag, what are you taking with you? No. You're not taking anything. You don't have anything to take. You are everything. And that is what goes with you. But how does it go with you? You may have heard that the vibration or the thought or the consciousness that you have at the moment of your death is what determines your consciousness at that moment. Like the most famous example of this is Gandhi. Has 3 bullets. Ripped into his body. He said the name of God. Can you do that? What happens if you have a heart attack and you fall down and you've broken your nose, but you don't even notice it because all you're seeing is what you've never seen before, the earth, from a 1/4 of an inch away? That is what you bring with you. In other words, I want to suggest one more thing to our listeners, another thing to experiment with that is calling to you. You are your perceptions. They're not happening to you. They're not happening in you. You are your perceptions. I once asked our non-physical teacher, will you help me prepare? I want to be conscious when I die. And the teacher said, I understand what you're asking. I would suggest that you practice living consciously. And I thought, well, that's what a teacher would say. But I didn't stop to realize it was accurate and precise, as everything this teacher has ever told me is. What is your awareness now? When your body shuts down, when you die, it'll be because the universe is accommodating something in the earth school because your soul has chosen to go home at that time. What will you be experiencing then? Well, those will be your perceptions. Those will be your sensations. Those will be your thoughts. Those will be your experiences. Now be with that, because that's with you. When you really look at these things, which means yourself and your unfolding consciousness, you cannot die. The question is, what will be your awareness, your experiences, your thoughts, your sensations at that moment This is an experience of, you might say, the universe. It's unchanging, but it always changes. It doesn't move, but it never stops moving. You are all of that. You are your awareness. What will be your awareness? As your body decides it stops functioning as you're accustomed to it? Or you look up and the last thing that you see is the car about to hit your body? That's what you are. That's your perception. You are not separate from anything in any way, at any time, under any circumstance. You are far more than you can imagine as you live your life here in the Earth School. But you can reach for the most that you can contribute in each moment. Learn how to create authentic power. And then do it. It works better if you do it.
Gary, what's the wisest choice that you've ever made in your life?
There are so many of them, I can't count them or recall them all. One of them did not even occur to me as a choice. When I first heard my teacher, it never occurred to me to doubt it. Later, I thought about what I was told. I applied what I was told. I used what I was told. I shared what I was told. Who told me to do that? Who said, you can trust that voice? When I know there's a lot of voices in my head that I wouldn't follow their advice. They come from fear. Also, there is wisdom in every choice you make. It's not possible to make a wrong choice or a bad choice. You can make choices that are painful, but there's learning in every choice that you make. So that's not exactly what you ask. It's the reality that there is wisdom or potential learning in every choice that you make. But that is, I think what you're saying is, what choices have you made that helped your awareness expand? As you encounter your new consciousness, it's sort of like saying, suppose that you're traveling through the countryside and you come to a field that's a beautiful field and there's a big red barn there. And then you say to yourself, well, am I going to choose to trust that red barn is really there? You just see it. It's there. When I first experienced non-physical reality, writing that chapter on quantum physics, it was there. I didn't have to say, well, I'm going to choose to trust this. You will in your life need to make many choices exactly like that. The question, the choice in your life is always, what will be your intention next, love or fear? And so it's not possible to say the choice of love is wiser than the choice of fear. But the choice of love will take you where you want to go. The choice of fear will take you, is a direct route to where the frightened parts of your personality want to go. There's learning in all of it. That's why I said earlier that the universe is compassionate. The universe is love. The Earth School is a gift of compassion, even though it hurts. Linda's soul going home was for me a gift of compassion, although it hurt. What gift in your life are you judging as not compassionate? If in that moment you create authentic power, you apply your emotional awareness, which we haven't discussed in this session, and you make a responsible choice while you're experiencing the painful physical sensations in your energy processing centers, your chakras, to move your awareness into a loving part of your personality. A time when you knew you were loved or loving, and choose to act from that part of your personality while you're experiencing the frightened part. Its pain and its harsh judgments. That's creating authentic power. And as you do it again and again, you begin to move beyond the control of that part of your personality. Now, when I experience a painful part of my personality, like Linda's soul going home, I can say to the universe, thank you. Thank you for showing me a part of my personality that I need to experience fully and move beyond the control of in order to give the gifts that I was born to give. I'm giving some of them to you now and to our listeners. I couldn't have before. But I'll still continue to remind you not to take anything that I say as so. Because everything that I tell you is all shared from the very limited perspective of this incarnation, of myself, of my soul as Gary Zukav, and it's this much. It's this big. And you can compare that to a freeway that goes the entire length of the United States. That's how much awareness can expand to and beyond. And my awareness is here. So it's from this perspective that I'm sharing the best that I can with you. The most loving, the most caring. What are you sharing? And why? Ask yourself those questions. There's no wise answers, but the questions themselves are wise.
And Gary, your story that you shared really shows us how unlimited love can really be.
Is. May I put it that way?
Is.
And how unlimited your awareness of it can be. And is, as you challenge all the parts of your personality that originate in fear and move beyond their control, because those are the parts that prevent you from experiencing love. When you are experiencing gratitude or caring or patience or awe of the universe, you are experiencing your soul. That is authentic power. The question is not, can you do it? You just did it. The question is, when are you going to do it again?
And you had an aha moment, as Oprah liked to call them, where I heard you say that as you evolve, you begin to sense that the journey and the destination are identical. How did that click for you?
Click isn't the right word. Click is a mechanical term. It's like when I recognized non-physical reality the first time, or when I woke up in the earth school, nothing clicked. It just happened.
Yeah.
Linda and I have been sharing what we were given to share, which is that the journey and the destination are the same. But it's never made sense because we never stopped to think about that. And it's not going to make sense. But if you resonate with it, allow yourself to be with whatever resonates with you in the most healthy way. By its definition, a journey has yet to complete itself, or when it completes itself, it's in a destination. But to say that the two are the same makes no sense at all. It simply seems ordinary to us to say those words. But as your consciousness expands, you begin to see what cannot be understood, what can be known, can be experienced, can be lived and shared with joy. Whoa, I don't want to get into teaching or preaching. This is not where I want to go. I just enjoy being with you, Emilio, and I enjoy being with the people who are watching our interactions. And if you found anything of value in them, try them out.
Yeah. And Gary, we end every show with a segment called The Final Trio, which are just final questions that we ask to open hearts even more. Before we get into that, where would you send people to connect with you further? I know you have exciting new projects coming up. You mentioned a book that you were writing. Where would you send people to learn more about that?
seatofthesoul.com, the website. That's the best place now. Also to the books, the Seat of the Soul book. And the latest book I wrote is called Universal Human. That was in 2021. Linda and I have written a book on emotional awareness, which is very helpful. It's called The Heart of the Soul. And we also have a book, Spiritual Partnership, which we haven't talked about this time. Spiritual partnership is a partnership between equals for the purpose of spiritual growth. It's what you naturally create and look for as you transition from 5-sensory to multi-sensory perception. Also, sign up for our newsletter. It's getting better and better. It's called Soul Connections. And it's got a video and something to read. And and also we have a new program. You can subscribe for free to it. It's called Soul Seeds. And every week you'll get something in the mail, your mail. That's just a thought, a quick one. It's a soul seed.
I love that.
Oh, and then we have another program. It's called An Evening with Gary Zukav. And that happens once a month. You have to subscribe to that. That one's not free. But it's worth it. Because of the questions that people ask. That's where the real wisdom is and where we talk about those. Like you and I have been talking about things. So go to the website, go to the books, go to your heart, go to your meaning.
We will put everything down below where everyone can find you. And for the final trio, the first one I wanted to ask you is, what does it mean when the universe provides us with grace?
I'll answer that from the perspective of the Earth School. The universe is grace. But what we generally mean is that for a moment, you have the experience of your life without fear. Then it's your responsibility to make that experience an ongoing, stabilized experience in your life.
Live a life with grace. Thank you.
Yes, a life of grace means a life of love, a life of awareness, not of need.
Second question, Gary, is what does your heart tell you or say when you tune into your love for humanity?
Enjoy yourself.
I love that. Simple. That was one of our intentions for this episode.
Yes, it was. That's right.
And the final question we call the time capsule question. And we ask this at the end of every single show. And it requires us to travel out into the future around 15 to 20 years down the line. And I chose out that time frame because that is going to be a moment when the next generations are going to be stepping more into leadership positions around the world and really spearheading the new consciousness and spearheading the new systems and structures that are being created on Earth. And you were given the opportunity to leave behind a time capsule for these leaders that they would open when they were ready in 20 years to truly lead and move humanity forward. You could put anything that you want inside of this time capsule. It could be something physical, non-physical, a teaching, a book, anything that your imagination can stretch to. But what would you leave behind in this time capsule for the leaders of tomorrow?
There are no others, and it sounds as though you're talking about the leaders as others. There is no future. There's no such thing. There's now. What you are now is the future. Create authentic power now. There's no future to create it in.
Yes. Authentic power now. It's time, isn't it?
That's another perception from the Earth School, which is the only place that time exists.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about time. I'm talking about now. I'm talking about your life. I'm talking about what you're experiencing now, which is the same as talking about what you are now. When you bring your awareness to encompass that, oh, that's where we're going. That's where we are. But it's not new territory from the point of view of the universe. The universe is all that is, all that could be, all that will be, and it's all happening now. And you are that now.
Aho, brother. It is always such an honor to have you in this light and to see you for truly who you are in truth, the divinity within you. It's such a beautiful reflection that you are paving the way in many senses by embodying this multisensory perception and really allowing us to see it in you so that we could see it in ourselves. So really all paths lead inward, as is the tagline for this podcast. And thank you for bringing us inward with your wisdom, with your joy, with your play, with everything that encompasses you, Gary Zukav, this personality and your soul. So I hope to do this many, many more times and continue this beautiful friendship and conversations that we've seeded here now.
I also, Emilio. Let's do that.
Let's do it for sure.